All right, so new day, and man, I bet you wish you knew what I just saw that made my face do that. Anyway, new problems or things that have occurred to me in the shower. I think I'm going to do a lot of the old in the shower. Oh yeah, right. I got to handle that kind of situations over the course of this project. So, what does that mean? Well, we're headed to supervise essentially the loading out of the material. I got to go by the customer where it's headed, even though they're getting it for free. I did confirm with them yesterday. You just want to see that that's working, and then I've got to look at the entryway vestibule. Used to be the top of a concrete monolith, and then you stepped up onto the floor system of the first floor of this house. And now it's going to be incorporated in the outside foundation wall, which will have a top edge coplanar with the top of the house's foundation. So I got to stop and fill up Ed's flat tires with a inflator pump here, and then we'll get back to this real quick. Just all part of the job. While we wait for the inflator, I just want to point out one of the things, hundreds of things that I see every day. But you know what that concrete driveway costs, and it's relatively new. It adds a lot to that house. But getting those joints straight from this lower point to the furthest point, that point in the center, pulls all three of them, well, at least the two on the left. Actually, the two on the left, it pulls to the right a little bit, and the one on the rightmost one is the best out of all of them. But if they'd all been straight in the middle there, it just would have looked professional. So when you hire a project manager or a general contractor like me, I'm the guy who's there on the day that it's pouring, and I make sure that that happens. Otherwise, you can come home every day and look at the fact that it didn't. And if it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter to you. But those are the little things that you get somebody who has seen all the mistakes, or as many as humanly possible, and they help you keep your project on track for you. It's well worth it, in my opinion, although I'm a little biased. Well, I blabbed the whole way to the job site there, and without a visual aid, I think it's really hard to follow. And I'm actually having a hard time with this issue myself in concept. So if you notice, the surface of the old original foundation is lower by a few inches than the top surface of the entryway floor, which was a monolithic concrete pour. And in the new design, this foundation wall that we're replacing is going to turn and come out here, turn and go over, turn and go over, and turn and continue going. And this space in here is going to be within the finished basement space. And so, if we land the house back down on the new foundation wall the way this house sat on that one, when you open this storm door, the top surface of this is going to be a few inches lower so it's level, but basically you step right off in there into a hole and through down to the basement. And so what we've got to do is build a floor box system to sit on top of this here that gets the surface of it in and flush with the interior of the first floor's floor surface. And so we've got to cut this up that high and try to get everything to come together when we land. So let's get you buckled up in the old overhead camera without flipping the footage, which is what constantly happens and ruins the footage. So I'm going to keep you down at a down angle here. See if we can't work this thing out. So, and I'm going to keep this right in front of me because I keep making mistakes here. But what we basically have is, with the existing house, we have the ground, we have the existing foundation, and then we had a monolithic stairway pour. I'm going to misrepresent that. Let's just do the 2 steps that it shows. It's 2 steps. Was here. This is what we've got. Thereby, there's a sill plate. The X shows the end grain of a board running around on there. And then there's a rim joist, 2x8. We know that's what the joists are. And the rim joist going over here at 2x8. And we know that there's boards and hardwood. So that's subfloor, and finished floor are on there like that. Now out here, we know that on that subfloor there's a sole plate to the interior wall, and there it goes up from there. And outside we've got sheathing and then trim and stuff around the door and what have you. So that fit around this little corner here of this thing that sticks up. As well as the sole plate on this thing coming over, and there's the front and the end of the one that goes across the front, and studs in here going across the front wall, and there's a storm door that you would open up, and that blue tile was on the floor in here. And so nothing about this structure has changed, it's just moved up. And we've erased, because you'd step up in here and this would be freezing cold, and the old exterior wooden door here would get freezing cold air underneath, and it has terrible R value, and so the freezing cold air is constantly sucking the heat out of this living room. I would like to incorporate the entryway space underneath this entryway vestibule as part of full depth basement space. That's the plan, and therefore it will have the contributing warmth of that space. It'll be insulated around inside the way the basement space is, and the outside walls of it, I may have to pull off the drywall inside here, but I'm going to make sure they have good insulation in there, and I'm going to put a new pre-hung fiberglass exterior door on this thing, which will look nice. It'll probably be full light or something because they're used to a full light storm door. But it won't matter that whatever stairs out here, the water splashes up on it, because the threshold is aluminum, but the jamb and the slab are all fiberglass. The trim will be plastic. The rim joists and stuff, we'll get into all of that. But this space will have far warmer air than outside, if not as warm as inside. And then they can keep the old exterior door that they're familiar with as essentially an interior door, and it will be far more comfortable in the front of this house, and you can keep boots and shoes and coats and stuff out here, and they won't be frozen to pieces. So how do we get that done? Well, we smashed up that concrete monolith, and we smashed up this old foundation, and we went up in the air here, but we've got this discrepancy here. Now, there's another thing here. So if we're coming down here onto our new foundation wall, concrete, and I went out over there with the vestibule in concrete, the vestibule wall turns and goes out there with concrete like that, it's all going to be coplanar at the top. And you got to put a foam gasket to meet code, and then you got to put a pressure treated sill plate on that new concrete for a new build. And so I expect to do it here. And they usually leave J-bolts at a certain frequency. I shouldn't have shown them that shallow. They go well on down into the concrete, and they're hooked to stay down in there. And there'll be some, here. They leave them in there normally, and so when I come around and put this down, I'll be putting the pressure treated on it, hitting it with a hammer to leave marks where these are, turning it around, drilling them, then putting the treated down, and I put a washer and a nut on there, washer and nut. Well, that's good enough for a new build because it's all under, there's nothing else that has to go there. But we have a sill plate stuck to the bottom of our house still, and in cross section, that means real quick, the way that the I-beams are underneath the structure right now, the joists go over onto and are on the rim joist, and the sill plate is still stuck on the house, not to mention the sheathing is down and over it. So I'd have to go up in there and rip down in the bays to try and pull this thing down and rip it off of there. But right now it is creating a structural component between the vertical rim joist and sheathing and it being applied to the bottom. When I take it off, all this stuff that's hanging out in space, maybe even a lot farther away from the I-beam, is all that much more flexible, and it's an awfully violent operation to try to be knocking them off there. And even then, the sheathing then hangs further down, and I've got to get the sheathing to come down and overlap this new sill plate, which would be very difficult. So all in all, we should leave the current sill plate. Could I put foam gasket and hope to set this down on just the original sill plate and somehow use a laser plumb to put the dots on and pre-drill it up in the air so when we lower it, it goes right over the bolts? Yeah, it's probably a true 2 inches rather than 1.5 inches, so the bolts would have to be left longer. Is Sean going to be irritated if a couple of bolts are getting jammed and pushing things around instead of coming through those holes when the whole building is coming down? Probably, yeah. And so what do we normally, or what does he normally see done? Well, essentially, we just bolt up a new pressure-treated plate and we put a nut on there. I'm sorry. I countersink these so that I can put a nut on there that's flush or underneath the surface. And if the bolt's sticking up at all, I can cut it off so the bolt, nut, and washer all exists under the surface of the new sole plate. And then once this, or sill plate, and then when this comes down and touches, later I can screw down through that one into this one and anchor the old sill plate to the new sill plate, which has been bolted to the new foundation, and basically not get anybody else's way. So that's my plan with that. How does it translate into this larger issue? Well, when I come down and stop here, obviously this will be up in space 2 or 3 inches, just hanging out. And so let's make it look, so let's show it down on this new foundation. So we're going to do a new sill plate as well, in pressure treated, and then we're right on the new foundation like that. And so this has been bolted up with J bolts that are underneath the surface here, and then that will nail down in, or screw it down in, and whatever, we have everything that we want there. But this is just hanging up, I'm sorry, and then the entryway vestibule concrete wall will be out here, coplanar with this concrete wall. Right? So this is what we'll have. And somewhere here will be the ground. Now, this is just a hole. The wall's only about this wide, and it's just wide there, you know, it's dotted or whatever, so because we're looking through things here, but like, that's just, if I were to, not only does this not come down and touch, if I were to put stairs here, I just fall down in a hole on my way to this inside. What I need to do is I need to cut this back somewhere. So I probably cut it back at the subfloor level up there. And I was thinking I'd do this all in the air, but it's going to be way too difficult. So I'm going to leave this down here, and I'm just going to throw a random block on either side to support it at the right height when we land this house. And then Sean can go on his merry way. And then there's a door up, you know, this has got a door hole in it or whatever like that. And I'll get under there with lifting shore or something at an angle outside, and I'll run it up to take the weight off enough to get this block out of here. And probably to close that crack against the house some, and to see that everything, I'll crank it up until when I cut this off, it's a level cut, and everything's opened here. And then, and I'll have put a treated plate all the way, because I'm going to follow this. What I'm talking about here is that the foundation wall comes over, it's going to come out, and it's going to go back like that. Okay? And we're looking at it from right here. And so this edge is this edge, and this edge is there. So you can't step right in here. You fall right down into a hole into the basement. So what I've got to have is I'll have a treated plate here, but then I've got the old plate and a 2x8 rim joist. If I were to just put a 2x8 rim joist here, it's not going to get me up because the stack up isn't right. I'm missing that old sole plate. So I'll have to put something on there that's 2 inches as well, and then a 2x8 rim joist, and go around the side. We're talking about building something here because the current first floor comes through like that and goes around. We've got to build ourselves something that sticks on there to get up to that level. So I'll have to add there'll be the regular green plate, the 2-inch sill plate, a 2x8 rim joist and side pieces, and then I'll find something that's the same thickness as the floor joists, or the subfloor is in here. And so basically the subfloor out here will be level and planar with the subfloor in there, and then it will probably need tile, because you don't normally come inside on hardwood or anything the same thickness. So we tile this entryway, and then you go to the hardwood with there'll be a transition strip in between the two types of finished floor in this threshold of the old doorway there, underneath that threshold. And thereby, we can have the hot air circulating around underneath here. I wouldn't even insulate this because it's protecting it from getting any heat. What I do want to insulate is the wall that we finish inside here, just as the wall inside of the rest of the finished basement is insulated, right? And we'll insulate the rim joist here. And this wall will be insulated here, and the wall, this wall, this wall, this wall, with the doorway in it will all be insulated there. And then that's all within the envelope of the house is the goal here. So this is going to be pressure treated, but this has to be 2-inch, and so I will try to find something pressure treated here somehow, because I want to make the actual rim joist, at least on the front and probably the 2 sides, since there'll be more than enough in an 8-foot piece. I could even just get a 12 that do all 3 sides, everything pressure treated, because out here, we'll have to come down a average sized step and then start our concrete stairs, which will probably be 2, 3, or 4, 3 or 4 stairs at least. And they're going to be stuck right against the house here. So basically, right in behind there, I'm going to want all of this to be treated, this to be a plastic PVC appearance board, this threshold to be aluminum, the jamb and the slab on this exterior door to be fiberglass and composite, and this to be concrete. And so we get up here and you get the roof that overhangs on this thing like that, and the very first raindrops that don't hit that roof and go off to the side that splash on this first step here can splash all over this stuff, and essentially it'll all have a flexible door pan and everything in there for the door install and caulking and stuff like that. But nothing here should be trying to rot on us. And there'll be a big old sealant bead there to keep water from going down in behind this poured concrete against the old foundation. Everything will be done up just real nice. But what to do here about this was in my mind. So I think we're going to do the double sill plate, which just means I'm going to cut anything that sticks up off of this new one flush, ready to come down onto it. And I'll just have a block or 2 ready to support this old vestibule wall plate on the new concrete until I can get in there and work without being in Sean's way. The last problem that we have here is that the beam has to be slid, the new steel beam has to be slid into place through here and stop on this wall. And so to get there, there's got to be a notch through this entryway and a notch clear through the foundation, rather than just being in the foundation wall having a pocket so that the beam can be installed down into that pocket. The pocket's got to come all the way through and out there. It's just a sub photo. You got to have a pocket. I'm just making a mess. So anyway, lots of things to think about doing before we try and set that house down, because that involves a day where Sean breaks out all the lifting equipment and gets it all set up again just to come down, and he doesn't want to be waiting around for us. So hopefully that clears some things up and we can see it in the field too as it happens. Okay, well, the dump truck just headed back. We'll come back and watch a load go onto the ground, I guess, for all the excitement that is. But they're coming this way, backing up, backing around behind me, dump it here. And this guy's got more void than he could hope to fill with this one project. Need a few projects this size here between him and the road, but just want some more yard, essentially. So this is a great use of this stuff. So it's a big fill project, not a top dress material. All right, this is load number 3, so it's a good looking truck. It's the right color, I'll say that. Matt's, I think, my age-ish. Mid-late 30s, is based out of my little hamlet here. This whole job sites, we're all in the same town, different hamlets here. Clearing and trucking. So what does he do? Slap that on over excavating? Oh no, it's right in there now. Used to be, it is still excavating for that, but if you're trucking only your own excavation, it could still say excavation on it. But if you're going to hire out, it says excavating, clearing, and trucking. What am I, retarded? Oh no, he's retarded. But now it says clearing and trucking too. That's an addition. But then you can hire it out, just this bit here, which is working good for him. It's working good for me, or it's working good for him, hopefully. It's got his name on the little rim board there. Finished. A lot of times that's wood, but I'm not sure that one is, but yeah, that's a beauty. Well, let's go over and watch her come out of the back of it. Kind of a gray day. Not as cold as yesterday. You can still see my breath a little bit. Low 50s probably. It's out, check, make sure he can see where he wants to be. I'm saying if we didn't have this weather, he could get a little bit closer and then practically roll up at the same spot every time, and there'd be so much, the debris would fall so far away that you could just always roll up there and it just continue to fall away, not even create a pile. See that as you create piles, you have to move the truck forward every time you land with a new load, obviously. So we had been hoping that you could just always roll up in the same spot, but the weather didn't pan out. We've been having, you know, rain and stuff, so over and over again all these days. And another thing he's thinking about are these overhead wires. You don't want to short the electrical. And just like you watch the weight come off my truck in the dump trailer, you can see it come off a little bit here and tug the front of the truck up some as it rocks back and forth, but nowhere near as much, and this is why we're watching those overhead wires. So he's got a vibrator he kicks on, which is sweet. Gets the last little dregs out off the bottom. And he'll sneak forward. As soon as he hears that gate crash, then he knows that'll be the last thing that gets that stuff to trickle down. A lot of times you get a bar on the ground of material because that gate smashes after you pull up, and so there's always like a material stripe, or a lot of times there can be. So that vibrator's worth it to have. Okay, back to the site. Okay, so I'm trying like hell to help educate with my blather here. Go ahead. And then folks who don't know what the crosswalk is for, we'll get in there too on it. But two things. When I'm talking about it being nice to pour that material over the bank and not continue to accrue piles, is because it's already really tight at that site. And the other thing is I'm trying not to show the person's house unnecessarily. I turn around and look, but it's super tight there, and he's got to do like a 17-point turn to get turned around and get out of there. And so you can paint yourself into a corner if you're just trucking. I'm just a truck guy. I'm just doing the trucking, and I just go here and I dump it, and I you know, and he's safe about where to dump it. If this is the person, then they can paint themselves into a corner, and all of a sudden there isn't room enough to take the material somewhere. And then, you know, now what do you want me to do? And I don't expect that at all out of this guy. He's a real pro. But if I'm doing something myself and I'm not thinking, all of a sudden I get to a point where I'm squeezed and I can't, now I don't have a machine here to move it out of the way enough to get the truck in and dump it. Now we've got a problem. So there's that reason for, it's a strategy that you're going to have about where to put everything so that it can all go there. We all have that strategy, but it's, so the second point is the overhead wires and shorting them out and damaging them is one thing. But sometimes guys have run up their box and then hopped out of the truck. And if you're holding onto the truck when you put your foot down and 200 amp service is, you know, running through that truck, you ground the system out with your body. And, you know, you've got a rubber sole on your boot and there's rubber tires on the truck prior to that. So you would think that if it's going to work there, it's going to work for you. I don't want to test that. And it's killed people before, especially with an excavator or something where everything's steel all the way down and you're touching and you don't realize it above, and then you jump out because it's a problem that you've noticed and you die when you touch the ground or something. So that's a problem there. And so when you're thinking about that stuff and you're dumping loads out and making sure that you can get turned around and go back to the job site and everything, and then you look up and find out that you've painted yourself into a corner with it, then you feel really dumb, but you've been the safest that you could be. And you've just made an error that won't harm anybody really, but it'll be costly or annoying to have to deal with. And so you're juggling those two things as that driver, and that's more about, you know, what we're paying attention to and looking out for here on this project with this part of it. Now we'll go back and watch him get loaded again. Meanwhile, Sean's getting some stuff consolidated from the back, brought up probably or whatever, but I'm looking at this. See, the other end of our road has been off and on closed, and if it had been open, he could come right and make the first right and come down here and get ready and then leave out this way. But since it's closed, he's going to come back this way, and then if he wants to leave that way, then he wants to back in to be loaded. And if he wants to back in, then it means he wants to drive over there and then back over in here. And so really, that car's unhandy, but I'm just adding insult to injury with where I'm parked. And so I'm going to move this. So there's a good example right there. What are the chances somebody had poop-colored mud on their shoes in the CVS bathroom? So this here is what you want to avoid. First we'll unload it, then we'll see if Sean can yank him free. Sean and I were holding the gate open to start with to keep it from getting jammed into the new pile. And we're gonna have to, if anything, back over there and dump in that direction with the rest of this, because this here is not functional. And coming up the drive and tipping it up that high and trying to dump it, you can tip the whole fucking truck over into the ravine. So we'll get her. Just missed it, just that quick. Well, you know, I said two things. I got two things for ya. Two things here. You're not pulling that truck out of that hole with that truck if it's loaded, which it was. So we dumped her there first. And the other one is you're not driving that truck loaded on that lawn on a day like today after all the weather that we've had. Although Sean disagrees, you pull that truck out of there in that scenario with his truck if the driveway isn't soaking wet. And I'll give him that, because it was trying to hook up and he was doing a real pro job of yanking this truck out of there. So we dug a little dirt out from in front of rear wheels like you would with a stuck in the snow problem. We were basically on the diff at the back, which is a problem because then you start unloading the wheels, and the wheels are what are turning, trying to drag your ass out of there. So that is what you're looking for, is to load the tires again completely if you can, and to try and keep them spinning if you can. Also, you'll notice his center axle is up, unloaded, to save the tires. But he's probably got that down once we're loaded here. I don't think anything like stone, pure stone and stuff. I mean, it's heavier, but we got water in this stuff and it's clay. It doesn't get much heavier than this. Pieces of concrete. So he probably put that down eventually. But they know one another, Sean and Matt Colo. So that's what's so nice. Sean got a call directly from Matt, because he'd got a call from the driver that he was stuck. Went over there and fixed the problem, come right back and go to work. Now, as a general contractor, if they were two different entities or didn't like one another, which happens sometimes among different contractors and stuff, and you try to make them work together, play nice or whatever, that could be a problem here. But I was happy to have Colo, because he and Sean are friends. In fact, I think he's got one of Sean's beams doing something right now. So just where you can streamline things. And I'll ask who I've hired to start with, or I'm thinking about who would they suggest for the other steps there, especially the steps that have to pivot or that have to handshake with them. So if somebody they work with makes a smooth process in their opinion from the past, then you just use them again in the future, right? Well, I think that's all of it. Sean's going to take that little bit of cast iron back. I forget he's probably got old cast iron that he finds every week. So if he makes a big pile where it's out of his way at home and takes it back for scrap, that's something that you can do. I saved our copper because that's easier to handle, lighter weight, and more valuable. So I'll do it that much with copper and brass. But he wanted to hang on to the cast iron. If I'd known that, I would have left it all out of the dump truck, or the truck that I took to the dump. That's about it. Just gonna back scrape this. Then we'll get some unwashed to save money, oversized, which is 2 and up, usually 3s maybe in there or more, and make a driveway to help support the weight for everybody who's going to be coming in now going forward. So they're not just pummeling this super thin piece of shit asphalt skim coat to death. Try and save this thing, even though I'm going to cut a big fucking stripe through this and rebuild the sewer. So I think this driveway's about had it at the end of this project. You can see it's only 2 inches of asphalt on the ground over there. There's like no base for this driveway or anything. Somebody just made it flat and poured asphalt. It's been okay with regular cars on. So anyway, we'll get a work driveway going here, and then tomorrow is footer forms. All right, that's that. Watch him put the tri-axle down. If he remembers. Ought to go when he pumps the air brake up. All with it, yeah. That's pneumatically assisted, I think. Or it might be hydraulic to set that down, I'm not sure. Oh, and it turns a little too. Does a little looked to me like it turned a little, the front wheels turned more, but that'll help you. Or something there. Or it's fucking broke. I don't actually know. So anyway, we'll get that driveway built. And I think that's all there is going to be to see for now. I might show a little bit of me. I'll get that delivered. Sean said he's going to have it delivered for me because he's got an account where they had that stuff for a good price and could get here today or tomorrow early. He may just spread it if I don't even ask for it. He might do it if he's here with machines. He's got to come and get his machines out because basically after these couple moves here, he's done with them. So he may spread it, and if not, I'll get it spread around. Just always a little something to do. Oh, and we had a whole snafu with this. Just a bunch of wasted blather from before when I was trying to figure this out. I was out thinking to myself, you always want to be at 11 when you're thinking these problems out, so you got every option available to you, but it can lead sometimes to going way overboard. All we got to do here is actually add from there to there, down. And so when we install a door, that means you just pull the top of it down some, and if you got a cheap siding and stuff down, whatever. I don't need a full step down here because, if anything, it was a little bit up from the foundation surface when it was concrete. And so I had been thinking it was concrete up to the wall alone, but it was up onto the edge there. Anyway, we'll get it, just pack it down some. And even if we don't, I can throw a little something temporary up when he sets the house down for me, and then I can push this thing up with my shores and just get everything just so. Because sometimes trying to get that just so when in the scheme of things we're putting the whole friggin' house down, that's not worth worrying about that little bit there. So we'll see.